from the cannons. When the smoke clears, we're still standing. Yes, we stand our ground.
You're listening to Everlasting Veteran.
Welcome, everybody, to Everlasting Veteran. I am your host, Ryan Landry, also known as Wind Talker. Today, I have an amazing guest. Her name is Jenn Ford. She is a singer-songwriter. She was born and raised in Texas. She is signed with a record deal out of Nashville, Tennessee, and she's here to talk about her military career as a military police officer and getting into music and how music has affected her journey through the military and after the military. Jenn, I am so glad that you're on. I have listened to some of your songs and they sound amazing. Your voice is amazing, and I love the storytelling with it and everything. For the listeners, if you can go into like kind of what started you with music and then your transition into the military with it.
Well, I've been a musician my entire life. I majored in music in college for 2 years. Before I started my military service, I was at a small junior college that I grew up, and could see that I wasn't really going to get to do the cool things I wanted to do, like travel as fast as I wanted to, and I wanted to exercise some independence from my family and serve. And so I joined up in 1998 and went into basic training down in Fort McClellan, Alabama, and went to OSIT training with military police and did that. I had an injury like 3 or 4 weeks into training that kind of set me back and delayed some of my training, but I ended up finishing about 8 months later. And while I was in basic training, one of my drill sergeants heard me singing. I was always singing in the barracks, and he mentioned that he had been a cast member of the U.S. Army Soldier Show and suggested that I check into it at some point. And so a couple years later, I'd already been on my first tour in Korea and had PCS to Fort Bliss and was in the MP unit there and spent about a year working the desk as a RTO, desk sergeant, blogger, blotter clerk, doing all of that stuff and doing law enforcement. Yep. And the Army band on post knew that I sang, and they asked me to come perform at their Christmas concert, and the post commander demanded it, and so I went and I performed with them, and then had been singing karaoke and stuff, you know, in the bowling alley on post, and so a lot of people knew that music was kind of my passion, and submitted my audition tape to the 2001 Army Soldier Show auditions, and they accepted my audition and brought me to Fort Belvoir, and I did like a 2 or 3 week long vetting process, audition, PT test, all the stuff you got to do to make sure that you're still military ready, and was chosen to be a cast member for the 2001 tour. And we did 105 shows in 6 months, traveled all over the U.S., to Guam, to Korea, to Hawaii. And that was an amazing experience with 16 other performers, I think 32 people on staff. We had an 18-wheeler, a huge bus, and millions of dollars worth of equipment. And we put on shows on military bases all over the United States and overseas.
That's awesome.
That was my first taste of like seeing what a tour would be like and seeing what production was like and lighting and sound, because we were not only were we performers, we were also crews, so we had to set up and tear down and move everything, and it was a lot of physical work and a lot of long days and long nights, but it was one of the highlights of my career. Unfortunately, September 11th happened while we were on tour. We were actually at Fort Irwin and had just finished a show, and we're getting up and getting ready to go to Monterey when we found out the news about the towers, and so that kind of changed some of the tour, put us on hold for a few weeks while everything was getting sorted out with airline safety and then we continued on from Fort Lewis to Korea and did some shows over there and some shows down in Guam and Hawaii, and we finished up in November, early November of 2001. And then I went back to being military police for about 6 or 8 months, but the Army bands kept trying to pull me in at Fort Bliss to 62nd Army Band. They said, we want you back. We want you to come be a special duty vocalist. And so the MP Corps went back and forth with them because they were like, we just let her go to the soldier show. We're not going to let her go again. But luckily, the post commander said,
Right.
no,
Right.
Jen is going to go be in the band, and I want her to sing at my house and do all my special events. And so I got switched over to that and re-enlisted. And the band leader at Fort Bliss called over to Germany and talked to the USER band commander and the sergeant major over there and said, she just re-enlisted for Germany. We want to do a direct assignment. You need her in your band. And so I think I may have been one of the first people to get a direct assignment to Heidelberg to the USER band, because usually there's an audition process with that as well, and they pull soldiers from units.
Right.
But I had a direct assignment, and I started. I got there in December of 2003, and by that time I was married and had our first son, and got in there and started performing. Became the training NCO, the vocal music assistant director, and started teaching and also running all the auditions for other soldiers that had talent that were coming in and trying to be part of the band. And did that for 4 years. Had another baby during that time. We probably did 150 shows a year, traveling all over Europe. We went to Iraq in 2005 for a holiday tour, and that was crazy and wild because we only had about 3 or 4 days notice, and very hectic. And there were some things that we experienced over there that made me realize how lucky I was to be in a position to have a special duty that didn't put me in the line of fire like all my comrades and all my buddies and brothers and sisters that were in regular combat units, because I never really had to do some of those MP duties when we were there, just for that TDY. And then I returned back to Germany, and a couple years later re-enlisted again for Fort Sam Houston as an MP, going back to a regular MOS job, and I became the provost sergeant for Brooke Army Medical Center and bought a house and thought we were going to be there. Was glad to be back in Texas, and I love San Antonio. And then they sent me to a lot of training. I went to BNOC, went to physical security training, they were trying to position me to for my E7 promotion, and then I got orders to Fort Carson. And so that was kind of 11 months of being back in Texas, and they were already sending me somewhere else. So I went to Fort Carson, and while I was at Fort Carson, my 2 sons were very small, and my oldest one, there was an issue at the school, and basically I made the decision that it was time for me to get out and be a mom, because they needed me. And I was able to get out with an honorable discharge and come back, and I moved back to East Texas in the Piney Woods where I grew up, and started going to school. Thought I was going to do music, or no, thought I was going to be a nurse actually and do something, as a public servant as a RN. Basically because I thought, it's time for me to get a real job. It's time for me to do something that is going to financially take care of my family, because by then I had already been divorced. And after about a year of going to school, I could tell that something was starting to change, or that I was experiencing some mental health struggles, and was having trouble with insomnia and outbursts and just panic attacks. And a lot of things started to surface that I hadn't really confronted, because in Korea, in my first assignment, I actually experienced a sexual assault, and so all of that started coming to a head. And I told my family about it and sought
It's really
treatment.
tough.
Had
I'm
to go.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, um, I did do the Article 32, and the soldier involved actually was discharged from the military, but because it was an MP unit, it was a difficult situation because nobody wants to talk about that in a law enforcement unit, and so it was very
Right.
difficult dealing with that on my own. And of course, I didn't tell my family because I was embarrassed, and it just was overwhelming. And I thought that I was over it, and I thought that part of my life was complete, but it was causing some serious problems in relationships and how I was able to cope with stress. And so, luckily, the VA helped me work through some of that, and I got therapy and counseling, and I'm in counseling. I've been in counseling for 15 years almost, and I think that it made me more able to talk about it and have a platform to encourage other people who've experienced trauma to confront it and grow past it and manage
Yeah.
what happens with PTSD in your brain, because it kind of rewires itself, and you've got to see where your triggers are and see
Right.
what things are going to make you kind of slip up. And you can't control what happens when you're having the effects of PTSD. It just happens. But fortunately, I have a very supportive
Right.
family, and I've remarried, and my husband is a superstar, and he knows how to come in and be the voice of, reassurance and calm. And he's supported me 100% with my music career, and we've been together 8 years. And so about 8 years ago, actually about 12 years ago, I started doing music in the community and connecting with friends and making friends and finding my spot in the community. I didn't finish nursing school. I realized that was not my passion, that I was never going to be happy or able to do that kind of job with the obstacles that come with PTSD. And
Right.
music was a constant, and music was before the trauma, and music was through the trauma, and music is after the trauma. And it, it makes me happy, and it's a perfect outlet for somebody to be able to express all kinds of emotions in a healthy way, and also reach other people and talk to them and encourage them that you're not alone with all of this. And I feel like I've made a um, huge strides and have developed a community that feels okay with talking to me about this stuff. And I, I'm a huge advocate for any kind of trauma, um, for any victims of trauma to see that there is something beyond that moment, and you can grow past it. But it never goes away. The memories never go away.
Yeah, it's true. It's truly, yeah, it's truly inspiring, and
So I'm here now.
I applaud you for being so strong, so strong to share your story. And that's what Everlasting Veterans about is not just your military time, but your transition. A lot of times people don't talk about their traumas. And for you to come on here and be able to tell the world and show how you dealt with the transition and be an advocate for it and everything else, it's truly inspiring to the person that you are, and what you embody in as far as pushing a mission forward for people to be able to heal. And I want to thank you for that, for sharing that. And you're really going to be able to touch listeners that listen to this podcast, and your experiences and everything else. And I hope anybody that's listening be able to go check out Jenn Ford's music, jennfordmusic.com. And now with your music, what inspired you? You went through a couple different genres, right? What inspired you to kind of stick with country a little bit more?
Well, I've done every genre. In the Army Soldier Show, we did pop, we did rock, we did country, we did classical music. And from college, I was doing classical music. and top 40 hits. And I'm country because I'm from the country, but I'm also a lot of rock and roll and a lot of
All right.
blues. And this area in the
Yep.
Piney Woods is famous for T-Bone Walker and Don Henley, and I'm just Whiskey Myers is from this area. They're just 45 minutes away from me, and I think that I even had a heavy metal band for like 3 or 4 years. So it's whatever with me,
I
whatever
saw that.
keeps me interested in creating. Yes. Well, I had a great time doing that, and that actually was my first. That was my first like attempt at trying to get into the music scene because it was the opportunity that presented itself. And when country presented itself in 2017, I was in school using my veterans benefits to go to school and working on my multimedia journalism degree so I could work in TV and radio and the music industry. Texas Country Music Association approached me to help them put on their first Texas Country Music Awards show and be the face and the co-host um, with Brandon Ryder. And I said yes because I felt like that it was a huge thing that was happening, and to be a part of it at the beginning stages was monumental in the step that came afterwards because they asked me to perform at the music awards, and I knew no one in the Texas country music industry, but I knew that I could put on a show, and I felt comfortable on stage. So I got up there and sang an original country song and literally got signed 2 weeks later by another veteran that was there that owned a record label, and his name is BJ Mezek, and he's my manager now. So
That's awesome.
it worked out. It worked out, and I put out a country album, and my first EP anyway, 5 or 6 songs. They asked for one, and I gave them 6, and I said, choose which one you want. And they said, we want all of them. And so we spent the spring, the beginning part of 2018, putting all that together, and I didn't even have a band at the time. So Chad Malden from KSIJ and Malden Productions helped me put it together, and then I started putting together a band, and then within a year we were on the radio, and then by 2019 we were the Texas Country Music Showdown Grand Champions, and we won $5,000 in a trip to Vegas, and we played at National Finals Rodeo in 2021, and I've been playing ever since. And I play an average of 150 shows a year, and since then I've released probably 8 to 10 more songs, and now this is my first full-length album coming out on Friday, on April 14th.
April 14th. You heard it in that. And what is the title of that album?
The album is called Americana Radio.
Americana Radio. You guys can check it out.
Yes.
It's going to be released on the 14th. Americana Radio. Jenn Ford. You've heard it on Everlasting Veteran. And I just want to say that what is, what has inspired you through music to help you with the transition? What can listeners kind of take from your transition and dealing with your trauma and everything else to work through their transition, or maybe trauma that they're dealing with? What advice would you give to listeners and people watching this to be able to get through that?
I think the first thing you need to achieve is you need to nail down what makes you you outside of being a soldier. I'm still feel the pull of being a soldier, and I'm 100% proud of my military service. And there were a lot of cool things that I did with the Army bands, but that was only half of my military career. The rest of the time, I was out there rucking and going to the range and working, going to the field and doing regular training. And I think that once you get rid of that part of your everyday routine and you're left there to take care of yourself, then it kind of gets a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot of freedom, but there's also no one telling you how to do life. And so you have to make these decisions on your own.
Right.
And you've got to develop a community around you of people that you trust, that you can depend on, and that takes time. And you've got to figure out who those people are, who you can call, and not everybody has that. So the best thing to do is to find other veterans that have already gone through the transition that can help mentor you and tell you how to go through the VA process and tell you how to get help. And you need to seek help and you need to use your military benefits because you earned those. You earned your education benefits, your health benefits, your VA home loan, all that stuff is yours. You don't have to feel ashamed about using that because that's what it's there for. And so I think the best advice is find yourself, find your community, get in a routine, and start using all of the skills and attributes that you learned in leadership and start applying it to your community. Because I would say that I've tackled things that I never thought I was going to be able to do simply because the military taught me that I could do so much more than I thought I was capable of. And it instilled discipline, it instilled initiative, and it also instilled a sense of service. So if you can't figure out what it is you want to do yet, then just start serving your community and get involved. And you'll find people that can
Regaining that
connect with.
purpose.
Yeah, you have to get a purpose. Life is not always going to stay the same. And so you have to adapt and overcome everything for the rest of your life and draw back on your, or go look back on your experiences and apply that to how you do life now. Get rid of the negative things and take the positive things and start using them to employ new skills. You can't ever stop growing and you can't give up. Don't give up.
Do you ever feel like the transition from the military doesn't stop? Like you're continuing to transition in some way?
Constantly, constantly. And you have, I mean, it pops up out of nowhere. Memories and stuff like that and experiences come up out of nowhere that may rattle you a little bit, but also experiences will come in there that you can relate to real life experience, to life outside in the civilian realm. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Um, do you have any particular songs that you've put out that you particularly connect with for your transition or your journey that maybe listeners can go check out and it maybe inspire them as well?
Yes, so I have an original song that's unreleased. It was the first song I actually wrote about 12 or 13 years ago. It will be coming out sometime in the next year. We've got some fine tuning to do because it's so important. It's called Pity, and it's about PTSD and about how veterans feel going through the different stages of that process. And by the end of the song, I'm basically saying, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I've moved through that, and this is where I am now. This is what happened. This is this is how I felt about it, and this is where I am now. And it's a very powerful ending. And hopefully, we'll release that by the end of the year or early next year. But I would say right now, off of this particular album, Nutshell by Alice in Chains is the original artist. I think is monumental in just reaching the heart of what it is to be a soldier and some of the indecision that comes with like trying to understand what our impact is in the midst of conflict. And we don't always understand the reasoning or the politics behind uh, the duty that we have to do, and it can be something to reflect on, I think, and say, like, I had to do what I had to do to make it through this, and to take care of the battle buddy beside me, and to take care of the unit beside me, and accomplish the mission. And it's bittersweet, but the arrangement that we did of it is beautiful, and I think is introspective in the sense that like it shows some of the sadness that comes with that, but it also shows the strength that comes with it too, because you just got to keep going. You got to keep moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good message, that, even though the transition doesn't stop, we can continue to grow from each individual part of transitioning out of the military, continuing to be the best version of ourselves and you being a family person as well, and transitioning out of the military, like many others, can relate to that. And like you said before, the sometimes you have those triggers, but having the support network to be able to help you through that when you need them is very important. And I think you said it very well. And a lot of people got to find their purpose, get into the veteran communities, work with other veterans, talk to other people that have already transitioned, and figure out what worked for them. Everybody's transition's different. And, I think if you can grab a little bit from everybody, you can make your own transition and, reintroduce yourself to the world as the new you, because the military does change you. Whatever your journey is through the military, going through basic AIT and everything, and then coming out, the military changes you. You're always a soldier. You're always a military veteran. And that's the new you that you need to reintroduce to the world. And I think it's very important that people understand that. And I talked to some other guests. I have a good friend and veteran. He said to me a few months ago, um, he had to consciously make an effort to effectively want to transfer out of the military for him to heal and move forward with his life. And it was very well said. And, I want to continue that message. He's not ready to come on here, but, his journey and his transition was difficult at times, but he had the support network, with me and other people around him. When he needed us, we were there. So now what's, you
Yeah.
got a tour coming up or anything? You got anything on the books?
Well, we're always playing shows. It's not necessarily a tour, but I'm scheduled from now to the end of the
Yeah.
year. I already know where I'm going to be. Um, I'm doing an album release on Friday, and then an album release show on April 22nd in Marshall, Texas, which is just about 30-45 minutes from me, but they have a great outdoor venue. And I was just on KMHT radio this morning in Marshall talking about the upcoming show. And we're going to have Leif Shively and Kyle Roop, who are the co-producers on my album, to come and open the show. And I'm going to have probably 6 or 7 musicians on stage with me the whole night. It's going to be action-packed, probably one of the best shows in my life that I've ever put on. And we've been doing rehearsals, and I'm super excited. I've never worked harder in my life. It's been 9 months of every day working, and I'm doing all of the promotion by myself. All of the radio stuff um, has been initiated by me. I do have my songs put out to CDX Nashville, which is a distributor that will send it out to 1,200 stations that are Americana across the United States. And I'm focusing on regional radio stations in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, just trying to build like a grassroots following, because it costs a lot of money to get your music heard and get it placed in different markets. And so I do a lot of this stuff by myself, and I believe that those relationships are established one person at a time, one audience member at a time, one interaction at a time, just like talking to you today. Like, now you know who I am, and your listeners will hopefully get interested in what I'm doing, and understand my story and come along and check it out. So that's what's going on.
And you're are you releasing most of that, like the music videos, to YouTube? Where can people go and check those out other than, is it just YouTube, or are you also releasing other places as well?
Well, to YouTube primarily, and then I will share to social media outlets as well. But we're doing them kind of one at a time. I've already released Gold Dust Woman
Okay.
in October, which was sort of a preview to the album, because it is a track included on the album, and you can go watch that. I produced, directed, and edited the video. Most of the videos I have on YouTube already, except for one, I recorded and put together and edited together, because that's what my degree's in. And now this time I have Surface Wave Media out of Shreveport, Louisiana, helping me do the filming and the editing, because it's very hard to do all of that by yourself. So um, I'm just sort of directing and helping them write the storyline and pick out locations and pick actors and stuff to come in and play. Mostly people that I know in the community that can pull it off, and so it's uh, a lot of making do with what you got, a lot of changing things up and maybe changing the vision a little bit. But I think it's very authentic because it's coming from people that are around me that are invested in what I'm doing and believe in what I'm doing as well. Veteran and non-veteran folks are supportive of me out here.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. And I love the fact that you're so, involved. Now, what's you got a tour coming up or anything? You got anything on the books?
I have some. It's funny you asked that because last night we were at rehearsal and my lead player was like during rehearsal we're actually meticulously going over trying to recreate some of the elements of the album, and he's like, Jen, I mean, I got to figure this out, and what are we gonna do for the next album? I'm like, dude, we haven't even gotten this one out yet, but I do have some stuff kind of in the batter's box. I've been writing constantly all through the last 2 or 3 years, and so I have several concepts, probably 15 to 20 songs that I've sort of started writing, and I'm hoping to start recording again in August or September, um, and maybe put something out around this time next year, at least a single, if not another collection of music. So, and it's going to be either country or blues. I'm not sure yet. It's going to be 100% Jenn Ford, whatever that is. Well, I think it's important to stay creative, and you can get in a trap with any genre of music to where you write the same song over and over and over and over again. The structure of the song can sound repetitive, and I think it's important to pull in elements that um, come from different instrumentation, come from a different writing style. The voice is always going to be the same, but the stories are going to be different because I've had a lot of different experiences, and so I'm trying to tell my story through those different experiences at different times in my life with different ingredients. And I usually work with the talents of the people that are around me and the musicians that are around me, and I hear something that they're doing either at a live show or just at a rehearsal that is a flavor that I haven't used before. And so like a chef, I'm in there like, well, let's put some of this in there, a little bit of that in there, and then see what we come up with. But that's kind of how I cook in the kitchen anyway. Like, you can ask my kids, they never know what we're having for dinner. I don't Yeah, the recipe changes. It's spaghetti, but the recipe might change, and it just depends on what we've got available. And I don't want to get locked into using the same thing every time because I think um, it gets stale, and you've got to experiment. And so I'm doing a lot of experimenting, and this album was a huge experiment. It's very ambitious. It's 48 minutes long. I'm kind of going along with the Yellowstone kick and the Western kick that everybody loves. I love that show. My dad always watched John Wayne and Clint Eastwood movies growing up. I love Quentin Tarantino films. I love the cinema of those long, crazy, epic tales that they have. And I love the musician, I guess the screenplays that come along with it, the musical screenplays that come along with it. And so there's some elements in this album that I pulled from, like the Clint Eastwood Fistful of Dollars, and just different like harmonicas and weird ambient auxiliary sounds that are coming in to just kind of show everybody what I like and what I thought was cool. And it's a journey. I think this whole album is a journey, and I want to show my journey kind of in a Western form.
And I think it's so inspiring to be able to do that. Be you and get listeners to like hear you and get to know you through your music. That's what I love about music. Because you can really be personable with the lyrics, how you sing it, and everything else. So this Friday is the big day. Everybody's going to be able to hear it finally, right? The 14th.
Yes,
So
I'm so
I'm going to
excited.
put the banner up. We're going to be able to So you're going to be able to get the album release this Friday, Americana Radio by Jenn Ford, available the 14th. And I'm going to be posting that stuff up on everlastingveteran.com with her links and socials, so you guys can go check her out. And all my listeners, my veteran listeners down in Texas that know me personally, you better go check out her show that's coming up as well and support this veteran and her journey through this music career that she has rocked out to this entire time.
I'm trying.
Jenn, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you can think of to leave the listeners with a little bit of inspiration and knowledge to help them with their transition and inspire them to keep moving?
I would say the first thing to say to all veterans is don't be afraid to be vulnerable and ask for help, because you show strength through vulnerability, and you need to be willing to accept help, and you need to be willing to see that once you get help, you can move past it. If you hold it all in and if you deny yourself assistance, then you're denying yourself a future. So don't be afraid. You can get past it. And I love all of you guys.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. And hopefully I can get a signed copy of the record when it comes out.
I'll make that happen.
That'd be awesome. You can send it up to me.
For sure.
Awesome. I appreciate you. And we'll keep in contact, and your journey through your music career, and get you on here again, and another album release. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and good luck this Friday with your release. And then you have your another party to celebrate it and everything. We're going to end this. I appreciate you and everybody listening. This is Everlasting Veteran. I'm your host, Ryan Landry, also known as Wind Talker, and this is Jenn Ford. You can go check out Americana Radio, Jenn Ford, available everywhere, the 14th this Friday. And you can go to everlastingveteran.com. I'll have all the links and socials up there. And check out Sky Hunter Outfitters, veteran-owned and operated company down in Idabel, Oklahoma. Female veteran-owned and operated company. Female power. This is what this week's all about. Female power, female veterans. Got to support everybody. Everlasting Veteran. Thank you so much.
I've been run down. I've been lied to. I don't know why I left that mean man beneath. Like I've been tied to the whipping post. Tied to the whipping post. Tied to the whipping post. Good Lord, I feel like I'm dying.